Hello, my friend. Welcome. I hope you're having a fabulous day. This is Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast. And oh my gosh, we're going to have such a good conversation today because, of course, it's Awesome Human Day. And we're going to learn lots of new and exciting things because that's what I like to do. And today we're talking to Lisa Tahir. Did I say it right?
You did.
Awesome. From, well, your website is NOLA Therapy, but is that what your business is called or
My business is called NOLA Therapy, and my podcast is called All Things Therapy.
All Things Therapy? Awesome. And you have so, like, I feel like this conversation could go in so many directions because of your background. But let's start with this. How were you drawn into this place that you are now of your business, of your coaching, of the things that you've been doing, the book that you wrote, however you want to dive into that?
Sure, Heather, and I want to thank you for having me on Back to Me. This is a pleasure and an honor because I know you're a transformational coach as well. And so we share the same space in different areas and realms. And I became a therapist over 20 years ago because when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I started therapy as a client with a social worker. And I knew this is what I want to do with my life. I always loved helping people and was interested in psychology, how our minds work, and just how we're like sponges, especially as children, absorbing and making meanings about ourselves, though I didn't know that then until I was
Right.
older. And I wanted to first help myself clear up some of those meanings I made that were hurting me, that caused me to feel unworthy and less than, and areas of my confidence really needed some reworking and rewiring, and still at times do. I feel like this journey is part of our life experience and path. And so instead of feeling like I haven't made it yet or criticizing myself, I encourage myself. This is just the path. This is just another deeper layer of awareness about myself. And I love helping others with that too, Heather, helping people really soften their judgments and criticisms and instead using self forgiveness and empathy, which are the two topics I wrote about in my book, having to do with healing our core wounds and vulnerabilities.
Right. And a lot of questions popped into my head, but I was thinking about the stories because we are stories, right? Everything about us is a story. And do you find that when people are doing that self criticism and that story of, I should have been or I didn't do this, that it's actually their own voice, or do you think it's a story? I guess it could go either way. I'm thinking out loud, a story that someone gave them.
That's such a good question, Heather, and I think it could go either way, as you're saying. And the term introject is what came to mind. That a lot of the beliefs that we run about ourselves, we think it's our own voice, but it's an introject. It's something we took in from typically a primary caretaker, and it sounds like our own voice at this point, but it wasn't. We weren't born with negative thoughts, which with things, telling ourselves that we're not enough, that we're unworthy, that we're ugly or we're fat or anything of the sort. We're not smart enough. Those are things that somehow we picked up from others along our way. And then we start to say it to ourselves. And it's really key what you brought up around identifying that this isn't something I came in with, and I really want to release this. I really want to change this belief. And what do I want to believe instead? Is it that I actually am smart, that I can learn the skills I need to do X, Y, or Z, that we can really trade those out when we bring awareness and intention. What do
Definitely.
you
Yeah.
think?
Um, Intention is a word that I think is so important to add into that because people will say quite often, I want, I want, I want, but nothing ever happens.
Mm,
And It's kind of a strange example, but I also think of, exercising. So you people who exercise, like you can go to the gym, and I watch people sometimes when I'm at the gym and they're on a piece of equipment, but they're texting.
Mhm.
And my thought is, I wonder if they will get the same benefit as if they actually focused on what they were doing
Mm.
instead of disengaging from what was going on. So I think, and I know there's a study that says, that 10,000 hours guideline to become a master. It has to
Yes.
be intentional practice. So putting that energy into what you want and focusing on it, I think, is a key to creating something different than you have.
There's a lot in what you just said. And even your gym reference, I know there's some research about if when you're lifting weights, if you really focus on the muscle you're working and imagine, concentrate, like squeezing it and releasing it, like really imagine the muscle working, it can make your workout more fun in my experience because you're actually in the moment contracting and releasing the muscle. And I think some research shows that it does do better for your body than if you're just kind of like, again, like not paying attention and kind of
Yeah,
hurling the weight around versus when you're really focused and bring your awareness to the muscle group you're working, that you get better results.
very true. And when you want something to change, like if you don't want to be in that unhappy place anymore, I guess some of people might be a bit afraid to bring their intention and attention to that because they might be afraid that it's painful.
Well, I'm wondering how you work with that because in my work, self soothing is a big part of it. Hearing you give that scenario, someone in some emotional pain around something and not wanting to go deeper into that or feel worse, feeling like they might lose themselves in those emotions. And I think
Right.
of how can you soothe yourself? How can you soothe your body? And I wonder how you approach this question and scenario.
I use a lot of breath
Mhm.
because it's a really fast way to get to shift the energy behind something, right?
Mhm.
And I know some therapists who use that self-soothing of like just touching or and I guess it could depend a little bit on how the person operates, what they would respond to the best. But
Mhm.
because we all breathe, I think breath work is a really great way into that
Yeah.
and can shift things so quickly. I've talked
Yeah.
to a few people who just are just breath coaches, and oh my gosh, the things that I learned about what the breath can do. So
Yeah.
crazy, right?
It is. Even noticing things like when you're around certain people, how are you breathing? Because I notice when I'm around people I really love and I feel cared for and I feel safe and like I can be myself, that my breaths are deeper, like I'm more in the moment, less thinking of what do I want to say or trying to get out ahead of the conversation versus
Right.
when I'm in settings where I might feel a little more anxious, a little more on guard, my breathing's more shallow. And so it's something I'd like to get better with and more intentional is when I am breathing more shallowly to notice that in the moment and try to extend, try to breathe deeper. And what you're saying is so important because it relaxes us. It allows us to get out of fight, flight, or freeze into more presence where we can actually access our thoughts and our beliefs and what we really want to say. And it can really take some kind of meta observing yourself as you're in a situation. It's a lot going on at one time, but we're so capable of these complexities.
Yes, and capable of those complexities. And even if there's a situation that will cause that immediate emotional reaction, you do have the ability to pause.
Yeah,
I call it pressing pause. And the breath brings that awareness back into you so that you can see what's happening and you can press pause, right?
absolutely.
And this something that had just occurred to me when you were speaking earlier about taking things and how we're continual as young as children often would take on to these stories. And but you had made a comment very early about this continual journey of being a human.
Yeah.
And I think that while we talk a lot about how a lot, and maybe that's what core wounds is, they came from, and maybe that's what you mean by it, and you could speak to it, they came when we were unable to discern. But I think sometimes, even when you're older, you are in a state where your discernment might not be working, and you can take on stories of partners, the things
Mhm.
partners tell you, and they somehow become incorporated into you in a way that I don't know if it's easier or harder to recognize because you think, oh, well, I'm able to make decisions, and you give them more credibility. Or I don't know if what do you feel? How do you feel about that thought?
The second part that you're saying, since it's kind of where we're
It is all over the
pausing.
place. That's how
Yeah,
my
no,
brain
I can
works.
no, I like it. I like it, Heather. I can follow you. I think that it could be a positive or negative something that we're taking in from the people we're close to. And I think the people we're close to, we're certainly vibing and deriving a sense of ourselves in some way based on how the people we really trust are responding to us and vice versa. And hopefully you're in communities where that's mostly really good and feels very satisfying for you. And when it doesn't, I think it's important to mentally note that you don't have to take that on. I know I do that when something happens, even with a close friend. You know what, Lisa, you don't have to take that on. They could be going through something and that didn't feel good. So I'm just gonna kind of go busy myself over here and let them have their time and space. And if it's something that needs to be talked about, if it's something that seems to be more and more and more frequent, that I would like to speak up about it, versus is it something I can just kind of distance myself from and let it kind of do its own thing naturally? Is that How does that feel?
Yeah, I think, but I also think sometimes people don't have that awareness that they can step out of it. I'm
Mm,
just thinking of clients that I've talked to who were carrying something that someone gave them in high school as an identity, and they still carried it with them. And I'm just thinking of one particular individual, one client I have, and when they said it to me, what their identity was, I looked at them and I thought, where did that come from? Like, it's nothing that I would have ever labeled them with in a million
yeah.
years. So I started asking the question, and it was one offhand comment of someone in high school, and it had incorporated into them. And I mean, I know a lot happens when you're young, and that's where a lot of your early identity comes from. But I think you're still being influenced at times when you might think that you are your own person.
And things are happening, life is happening. And what you just described, it reminds me of a talk I recently gave in Los Angeles at Mystic Journey bookstore related to my book. And I spoke about how people hide their pain, try to hide their pain in us, in the scenario you just gave. And it's typically a scenario, a person that has some woundedness, that has some damage within, some unhealedness within themselves, and they try to hide it in someone else. And we sometimes take that on, not conscious of this pain that we've taken on, and then we start to question ourselves, where especially if somebody is in gaslighting experiences or people aren't being accountable for their actions or their words, we start to second guess our own inner knowing about ourselves, and we start to question, well, did I say that, did I do that, am I? And that's really when we can really go off the rails. I know I have, in a
Right.
lot of depression, anxiety, and it's really important to learn to note that when someone hides their pain in you, it's not our job. We start relating to the pain instead of to the person. We're relating to their pain, hoping they're going to relate to it with us, but they're not. It's like they've like boop, like dropped it within us. I did an analogy with an orange ball. Like they drop our pain in us, and then we start to ask them questions about it, because like, you hurt my feelings. You said you were going to meet me at 5 and you didn't show up, or you didn't call. Like, what's going on? And then the person's like, what? Like, I never said that. And we start to second guess and doubt. And that's when you can start to see you're in a relationship with someone's pain that they're not accountable for. And it's
Right.
important as early as you can to try to, I have even said out loud, Heather, I give this pain back to you. I release this pain from me. I give it back to you. And like a meditation type setting, not to them verbally. That probably wouldn't go over well.
They
But you
wouldn't
can,
understand.
right, but you can do these things for yourself to start to heal. And I think this is when we really outsource our intuition, our good judgment, and it's important to try to not do that and to really honor your inner knowing of people, of places, of things. We are all gifted with a guidance system that directs us, that leads us, and it's important for us to listen to what our emotions are saying to us. It's really valuable information.
Yes, definitely. And often I think that we we don't give ourselves enough credit for how much we know, like our how strong our inner knowing is, and we let people outside of us convince us that we don't know, right? It's
And yeah, and that's when we start to lose confidence. That's when we start to feel depressed, when we start to feel anxious, and healing that through really becoming accountable for your own beliefs about yourself, self affirmation, really cultivating practices where you feel loved and seen and heard, be it through journaling, meditation, walking, listening to things, podcasts that uplift you, so you can really value yourself and know that you can trust your inner sense of people, places, and things. And you don't have to give that away to someone or something else.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I find when people find that place where they are, I want the word solid comes to me. You're solid as yourself.
Yeah.
You can actually be more present for others, and you can't fix people. I mean, that's not your job, but you can help, I guess, in other ways, be supportive and be available. And as long as you can stay in your strength and your center, I
Hmm.
your now your book, The Chiron Effect.
It touches on all these things that we're talking about. It
Yeah,
talks about these various wounding experiences that we have in life, be it through abandonment or neglect, or a lack of valuing ourselves, a lack of our own self-confidence, when we feel cut off from community, where we might feel like, where are my people? I don't feel like I really fit in here. That would be Chiron in the sign of Aquarius, as an example. And so my book really helps with these areas and situations that we experience in life, and how to heal ourselves, how to really get a handle and come back to our place of empowerment, empowerment, feeling stronger and more stable, and being able to really navigate these experiences with others without losing ourselves and feeling so just distraught over things. It doesn't mean we're not going to feel grief or loss, because certainly that's a part of a relationship that you might cherish and love. If it changes or ends, there's naturally going to be some emotion around that that's healthy. My book helps you navigate those things so that you come out with like the silver linings and what you've been able to learn about yourself and life that you want to bring forward.
and I mean it is true. All of life is going to keep happening. All all the parts of it, happiness and sadness and joy and grief, all of the things that we came here to experience are going to
Mhm.
keep happening. It's what you can do with them and how you, like I
Yeah.
like the word navigate them.
Navigate and even create, even learning to create more, like, learning about life through more joy, through more love, through more happiness, rather than painful losses, that we can get to a place in our development psychologically and spiritually where we're learning through more joy once we heal some of those deeper areas of vulnerability up to and including core wounding.
Right. And so I have two questions.
Yeah.
Chiron is the planet, correct?
Chiron is in astronomy both a minor planet and a comet. It was discovered in the early 1970s. It has an odd elliptical orbit in between Saturn and Uranus, and it was named Chiron after the mythological Greek centaur named Chiron. He's the founding father of medicine, of botany, of pharmacy, of the healing arts. And when we go to the doctor, and you see the staff of medicine, the staff with the two snakes intertwined, Chiron gave that staff of medicine to Asclepius in Greek mythology. So he's referenced, as well as in Carl Jung's work, having to do with the collective unconscious, and that the part of ourselves, kind of collective wounding, that we've, all collectively as human beings experience certain wounds emotionally and psychologically, and therefore we can heal collectively and individually. So Chiron's spoken about in several ways. And in my book really focuses on the astrological placement of Chiron in your birth chart.
Oh, cool. So where it is during your when you are born
Yes.
affects your wounds or affects how you process or
Affects kind of both. And what is so interesting, it's different than your, like, what sign are you, Heather?
Sagittarius.
So you're a Sagittarius. Oh, awesome. I have some dear Sagittarius friends. And so it's Chiron, your Chiron sign is different than your sun sign or your rising or your moon. And it speaks to an area of vulnerability on a spectrum, which could include core wounding if you've experienced some traumas like sexual abuse, domestic violence, neglect, and abandonments, things like that. Some people haven't experienced that level of wounding. So for you, it would be an area of vulnerability, like kind of an ouch, where it's like a sensitive spot in your psyche where you might be, you might look really successful on paper, but inwardly you feel like you're not good enough. And that could be vulnerability, or it could be a deep wound where you really compensate to not feel that way. You do a lot. It's the person that has a lot of wonderful things on their resume sometime, that might be from a place of trying to compensate from feeling like you're never good enough, which would be a core wounding. And in my book, for instance, I would help you approach that differently. I would help you learn to be more comfortable with just being, like doing things that aren't so performance based, learning to just step away from your work, to just like go to the beach and not read something that's professional, read a magazine, or go do something that's, again, totally for pleasure, which you might feel like doesn't add value, but it's exercising a new muscle to allow yourself more pleasure. And
Oh
that's an
my gosh.
example.
I feel like that is a lot of the planet right now.
Say more what you mean.
So the have to be productive, have to prove somehow that you're, I call them doing, the doing. And because I know there's people who don't know how to not do, like you have five
Exactly.
minutes. I have to fill this 5 minutes with something and don't know how to stop. And
Mhm.
I guess I never really looked at it as a wounding. It was, I felt more like it was kind of like a societal expectation of performance.
And it robs you of happiness. It robs that individual of feeling like, I'm doing well enough now and I can pause, I can stop. There's going to be plenty of time, and really allow yourself to trust in a new and different way that things are going to work out, and to allow more happiness. And it takes doing things differently to kind of test it out. So in my book, I offer 5 or 6 practical takeaway steps where you can kind of, in little increments, allow yourself some new possibilities to try them out as experiments and see how you feel. Try it for 2 weeks. 1 week if you can't do two, and see if you feel differently, if you feel better, if things are getting done even more easily than in the way you had previously, and you actually feel happier and you're more rested.
Right. There's a coach I listen to who calls that, he's like, it's like going to the mall. Just try it on, see how
Yes.
it fits. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, take it off.
I call those experiments. I'm
Right.
big into 30-day experiments with myself and then offering that to others to try, just try it out.
Why not? Well,
Mhm.
you can always stop, right? And I was interested. So I feel in some ways like core wounds, like some people might think of it as like, oh, my young life was fine. I was fine. But I don't think it always has to be something, you know, worthy of reporting to the police. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't
Sure.
have to be so huge for it to have affected you in a way that will highly influence how you operate in the world. I mean, we all, well, not we all, okay, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and
Yeah.
the way you raise children is very different than
Yeah.
even in the 50s or, in the whatever we now, the 2020 somethings. So, what might have seemed normal could have felt like, to some people, could have felt like normal, and that's just the way life is. And for some people, it could have felt like trauma. So I feel like
Absolutely.
it's not limited. I feel like core wounds aren't limited to huge, massive trauma. Maybe I don't know if I'm expressing it well.
Yeah. No, they're not. It's really, but and parenting's such a challenging job. So this isn't about having bad parents versus
No,
good parents. It's about the experience that maybe when you grew up, both your parents were working and you were alone a lot of the time. And that caused you to feel sad. It caused you to feel alone and lonely, and the meaning you made about yourself is what's the deeper truth, which could be something that's core wounding to you in your adulthood, like I'm not worth staying around for. So maybe
right,
your relationships end after a certain amount of time because you're kind of carrying this belief that you made, though a part of you knew my parents are working because that allowed us to have what we needed, but it might not have felt that easy, especially to a young child or an adolescent that maybe needed some more human interaction. And so you come out of that with a belief somehow about yourself of, people leave or don't stay around. So it's really important to uncover what meaning you might have made about things so that you can heal that part of yourself and acknowledge that younger part of you that was alone, and really give him, her, them that acknowledgement of your presence, of your awareness, so that you can kind of bring them up to this current place in your life, and have different outcomes in your life, that people are staying longer and you're engaging differently, like there are new outcomes that you start to experience when you heal these areas of yourself.
right. Have you ever found anyone with core wounds that came from previous lives?
I see lifetimes as running concurrently, Heather. So for me, what I've been shown is that though we're in a human body and we construct time, past, present, and future, so we can organize ourselves and our entities and get on airplanes and make it places, that truly time being a human made construct, it's like the timelines are concurrent timelines, and I've had experiences of learning how to shift some timelines for more positive outcomes in the field of infinite possibilities. So I think certainly some of the wounds and vulnerabilities could have occurred in kind of a different timeline, so to speak. But I think the most important timeline and life that we're in is the one that we're aware of right now, that our
Right.
power is in the now. It's in our present moment awareness. So to try not to worry so much about past or unknown lives or timelines, to really just be conscious and aware of what you do know, because there's plenty here to work with,
Oh,
and
yeah.
try not to feel afraid of that, is what I find myself telling clients that might fear they have an unconscious belief or a block. And I think some of that keeps us in fear of our own selves and our own inner knowing, that when we need to know something, it will be made aware to us.
right?
We're so loved.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, part of the processing, I feel like would be being able to recognize how you do want to be in the world. So it's because sometimes you don't want to jump until you know what you're going to grab onto. So
Right.
it's like a movement. This is what I'm going to move away from and into this.
Yeah.
Is do you find that that helps people shift?
I think that can be important, Heather, because we like to feel, as you're saying, a sense of security, a sense of mastery, a sense of I'm safe in my world. So I've always been a big believer in keep doing what you're doing until you know what's next or otherwise, and kind of like reach, out of your comfort zone when you can in ways that might feel like kind of scary as shit, but also so exciting. Like there's excitement with the fear. So it's not just terror. I don't believe the universe wants us to be in terror or fear, but the universe wants us to be like that excited, like I think I can, like I really want to. There's a whole different energy to that. And I think that's when we really step over into new experiences that then we can be so proud of ourselves for.
I'm just remembering of like, when you're a kid and you're standing at the top of the diving board and you're like scared as hell, but
Yes.
it's pretty exciting and
Yes.
everybody's cheering and you're like,
Yes.
okay.
And you know you're safe. Yeah, that's a perfect, you're supported. It's like, come on. And then you jump, versus doing that, off a cliff in a way that is not safe.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a magnet on my fridge that says leap and the net will appear.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I think there is a balance. Like how I see it as about there are times when I've leapt, like I haven't really seen the net, but I feel it. Like I know in my awareness and my intuition it's there. I don't see it yet, but I know it's there, and that's being using our senses, our extra perception. And I know because there are times when you do take a leap like that, but you don't need to see it because you feel it. So it's like
Yeah.
a different awareness you're perceiving from.
Yeah. And trusting that. I did the same thing. That's when I left the corporate world. I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was going to do, but
But you
boy,
knew it
yeah,
was going
I
to
knew
work
that
out.
it was going to work out and I knew that it would be the best decision ever.
That's it.
And
And it
and
was.
and it totally has been. It's been the
Yeah.
best. And and it's not for everyone. Don't just do it because I said I left corporate and my life changed.
Well,
Let me put it.
you've really felt that through entire, like you were on a journey there,
Yeah.
Heather, I sense. Like it
Yes.
was very thoughtful and intentional.
And the even if I didn't know where it was going to lead, I knew that there was a road to follow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And each step would appear as it needed to. I know
Absolutely.
often people want to see the end zone, and I still don't see the end zone, and that's okay. And it's been, like almost 20 years.
Yeah. Book that's really helped me, Heather, that I heard years ago from Jack Canfield, I believe, Chicken Soup for the Soul author, is I was reading and he was describing the scenario that we all are familiar with when you're driving at night on the highway, on the interstate. uh, the headlights shine 200 feet ahead, and we're comfortable getting on the interstate, driving from point A to B, just being able to see 200 feet ahead. And that's been such a helpful metaphor to me, that we don't see the whole road, but we trust, we know it's there. And to really apply that, I've applied that so many times to my life. When I see, say, 200 feet ahead, it's like, okay, like trust that at the end of that 200 feet, more will unfold. And it always has. And it is.
That's an excellent metaphor,
It was a great one. I have to credit
right?
him, 'cause I didn't
Yeah,
make that one up. It's really,
that's
really
okay.
awesome.
I'll credit him too when I use
Yeah.
it because, I'm totally putting that into the bank.
Good. Yeah. It's such a good, it really like registered with me.
And you're working a lot with people just one on one, right?
I do a lot
Oh,
of
and
one-on-one
couples.
and a lot of couples. Absolutely. I really like, and I do some, I lead meditations for groups, both on Zoom and in person.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, that's been really exciting to do.
I love that. When are those?
I don't have one
Here's
coming up, but if
here's
somebody
me
wanted to
going,
invite me,
I'm like, oh
if,
my God, I love meditations.
me too. If somebody wanted to invite me, I'd love to plan that. with
Right?
them, or to help you learn to meditate more with more satisfaction and with more ease, to really feel connected to the practice. I think it's important to do practices that we're connected to, not just because we should, but because
Yeah.
we really feel boosted up by it. It really
Yeah.
resonates.
Very true. It's yeah. Um, I've been teaching yoga for 19 years, and
Oh,
people will
wow.
always ask me, "What kind of yoga should I do?" And I say, "The kind of yoga that makes you feel good."
Yeah,
And because there's so many practices, and it's also influenced by the teacher you're with,
it is.
and all like so many things. So, because if you try it once and you leave and you think, "Oh, that wasn't for me," I just think it's probably the wrong class then, you
I,
know?
you're speaking my language. There's a yoga class. I had done yoga for a number of years, and then I quit totally for about 3, 4 years. And I just went back in the last few months. And last night, coming back to Los Angeles, I went to my favorite teacher's class, and it was a transcendent experience. Though it was hard, it was also so delicious. I felt like my body, soul, and spirit felt just totally in union. And you're right. It's about, like, for me, this teacher really brings a class that like really absorbs me into the moment. Like, I'm so there on my mat, and I find it to be so healing.
Right? Yes. And as I know still yoga is not for everyone, but
I think the stretching, something about it, I think is powerful. And, yoga has been around for thousands of years. It's something that I think is like a really important practice to try out, to somehow
yeah.
use the stretching, if anything, is so good for you, for your body, for your organs. There's just so much good there in whatever way you might develop a relationship with it.
I've now been teaching for a number of years a fusion of yoga and Tai Chi
Oh,
that
wow.
it's we could go off on so many places. It's just an
Yeah.
interesting contrast of the way the energies move. So yeah, it's super fun.
Oh, I would love that because, wow, that's brilliant, Heather. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Um, and your book is everywhere, right?
It's everywhere. The Chiron effect, healing our core wounds through astrology, empathy, and self forgiveness. This purple book, it's actually in Barnes and Noble stores around the US. And if you have a favorite local bookstore, you can even Google my name or the book, bring it in, and they can pull it up based on the ISBN number, and get it through your favorite local store. I love shopping at local community bookstores. They're such special places. So
They're
have
so fun,
your, yeah, have your place get it even there. And if you don't want to do the Amazon or big places like that.
right? That's brilliant. Yeah, I like getting things more locally
Me
than
too. Like in
delivered.
New Orleans, Blue Cypress Bookstore has been a big supporter of my book. I love them, and I just love, and when I'm in different cities, I'll often carry around a book and just go in and ask, like, would you consider carrying my book? And so many of them have like been like, sure, we'll try out a couple copies, and they'll buy it and
That's
sell
cool.
it. So yeah, so definitely ask at your local place.
Okay, I just clued into what NOLA therapy was.
What?
Is NOLA stand for New Orleans?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like,
No,
oh my
so
God.
can I tell you this, Heather? So NOLA therapy, I started in 2007 when I only lived in New Orleans, Louisiana. So my web designer, Gary Reggio, who's brilliant, he's like, Lisa, it's nolatherapy.com, like New Orleans, Louisiana therapy. Little did either of us know that years later I'd come out to Los Angeles, and now it's New Orleans, Los Angeles therapy.com. And I got chills, like the universe kind of knew, or a part of me knew I'd be coming out. It's just amazing, like the consciousness of even like your future.
Right? That's amazing. I can't
Yeah,
believe it took me so long to just clue in. I
it's
must have
okay.
just got into the vibe right there.
Yeah.
Yes, New Orleans is a very fun town,
Have you
friends,
been there?
but I have pre-hurricane I was there. I
Okay,
was there in
yeah.
1980, 89.
Well, if you come back, let me know and we can definitely
Okay.
meet up.
That would be super fun, super fun. And I have the website for you. Everybody can grab you on your website, nolatherapy.com. Stands for New Orleans and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And your book is everywhere. And I guess if they want to connect with you, they can just go through your website and get.
You're welcome to go through nolatherapy.com or email me Lisa at nolatherapy.com. And I'd love for Heather, your community that you've created through your show and your work, if anyone wants to do an individual session with me or a 30-day unlimited therapy experience, that it for your people, if they just mention you, your show, it's 50% off for new
Really?
clients first time. I'd love to offer that as a gift.
That's super generous. Thank you
Thank
so
you. You're
much.
welcome. My pleasure.
And I think the work that you're doing is awesome. And um, I feel I feel like the work that I do is trying to help people heal and become whole. And I think you're doing the same. And my intention with it is I told my mother probably 30 years ago that I was supposed to save the world, but apparently I needed to do it one person at a time at that
Mm,
time. So I feel like this allows to have more people
it does.
heal and and just elevate the
It
planet,
does.
right?
Elevate the planet, elevate yourself, elevate me, and just raising, yes, our vibration and our happiness and joy and abundance, which is so important.
Yeah, beautiful. Before we say good night, good afternoon, do you have for us a final word or three of wisdom?
Heather, what comes up right now with you, and it's you're so easy to talk to, which I appreciate, and I sense you'll this resonates with you, is that we're really so tended to and cared for. We're so loved by a bigger energy and force, and I've started to really want to know that every morning. Like, show me how much you love me, show me that you care about what I care about, show me that I don't have to be in fear, that I can be in trust and allowance. Like, show me, and to really ask, like, ask for more than you ever have and see what happens. And I just would love for everyone watching, listening to do that, to just a thought in their mind, like, show me how much you love me and take care of everything and allow me just ease and to be happy and just see what happens.
That is perfect. That is perfect. Yes, thank you so much for that word, those
You're
words.
welcome. Thank you
I
for
am
the space.
I am incorporating them as we speak. So thank you. And I hope I get to talk to you again sometime soon.
I would love to have you on my show this year on all things therapy.
I would love to. That'd
Yeah,
be
let's do it.
amazing. Okay,
Yes.
let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, my friends, when that happens, I'm going to let you guys know as well when I'm over there. Have an outstanding day. Take care of yourselves. Know that we all love you and the universe loves you. And we'll see you again next